The virus of life. The world's religions and secret society. Sexual suppression supports the power of the church, which has sunk very deep roots into the exploited masses by means of sexual anxiety and guilt. The church engenders timidity towards authority and binds children to their parents. This results in an adult subservience to state authority and to capitalistic exploitation. It analyzes the intellectual critical powers of the oppressed masses because it consumes the greatest part of biological energy. Finally, it paralyzes the resolute development of creative forces and renders impossible the achievement of all aspiration for human freedom. In this way, the prevailing economic system, in which single individuals can easily rule entire masses, becomes rooted in the psychic structures of the oppressed themselves. That was a statement by Wilhelm Reic. Human civilization on Earth has always been teeming with ideology and mythology. To our ancestors, there was a spirit in everything, an invisible aspect of the self which permeating every life form. Even Shakespeare thought that every person, animal, object, event, and idea was a prop in the stage for God's play. Historically, we can look back and count innumerable religions which differed in patronage, identities of deities, devotional methods, etc. But there has always been one element that has never changed, and that is the meaning given to any observation. Meaning comes from the heart. The thing binding us all together is spirit, and that exists eternally. It is the eternal truth that drives us every day. If you think you will die one day, you are only viewing things from the perspective of your self-image, not your real self. Your real self does not think. It feels. It's from the heart. You feel this sensation in your heart chakra when you meditate. This harkens back to the first paragraph of this book when I suggest that reality transcends thought. The highest form of perception to the ancient mystics and seers has always been a feeling of oneness with all, not intellectual calculation. The self-image calculates and the self feels. This is a feeling of immortality. All ancient scriptures point to the fact that there was a time when mankind was immortal, or at least close to immortality. In the Bible, Adam and Eve, Adapa and Lilith, were bequeathed an abode in the Garden of Eden, the E.DIN complex in Mesopotamia, by the Creator. But one day, they were excommunicated after having eaten from the forbidden tree of knowledge, the mystery school, and were forced to live elsewhere. Ever since that fateful day, great heroes like Hercules, Odysseus, Gilgamesh, and Alexander have traveled far and wide in search of this garden, which supposedly enclosed the elixir of life. We've been told the New World was discovered when explorers from Europe thought a new maritime route to India. Of course, knowledge of the New World was known beforehand, and that Christopher Columbus was the hero. But these are lies, as I will detail later. When the New World was supposedly discovered, Queen Isabel and King Ferdinand of Spain entreated Christopher Columbus to search for the fountain of youth, the begotten water of the gods. When he arrived, he questioned nearly every Native American, oftentimes under torture. Ponce de Leon, a man well trained in executions, witnessed one interrogation and heard something which intrigued him. He reported to King Ferdinand that several Indians coming from the Bahamas and Lukoyos Islands spoke of an island which contained a perennial spring of running water of such marvelous virtue that the waters thereof being drunk, perhaps with some diet, made old men young again. In March of 1513, De Leon set sail for the island of Bimini under the pretense of searching for gold and silver. The expedition traveled in vain, but more talk of the island was heard. Later, the king and queen of Spain sent De Leon to the coast of Florida. It was there where De Leon met the fate of an arrow. Even so, tales of a fountain of youth and an elixir of life continue to echo throughout the ages. Have not the Greeks and Romans left behind tales of immortality? What about Hercules and his 12 labors? What about Apollo and the promise if he brought back from Hesperides the divine golden apples, he would receive immortality? What about the goddess Aphrodite granting a potion to Phaon and whence drunk transforming the man into a beautiful youth? There was also the tale of Tantalus becoming immortal by eating at the table of the gods, feasting upon their nectar and ambrosia. In the Odyssey, the mighty Odysseus is offered a quarry by the nymph Calypso, that if he stayed with her as her consort, he would be made to live forever. Even Glaucus was transformed into a sea god by Okeanos and Tethros. Predating these tales as the stories from Sumer and Babylon. The manly Gilgamesh had the answer to immortality in his grasp before he was turned away. The general of Macedonia, Alexander, who conquered most of the ancient world in the 4th century BC, quested for immortality as well. On one attempt, he battled demons in an underground passageway, whereupon an angel came to him and proclaimed, "I will tell thee something whereby thou mayest live and not die. In the land of Arabia, God hath set the blackness of solid darkness, wherein is hidden a treasury of this knowledge. There too is the fountain of water, which is called the water of life. And whosoever drinketh therefrom, if it be but a single drop, shall never die." In the end, however, Alexander's toils went to naught. So where was this fountain of the gods? How did the Greeks and Romans know about it? How did the Native Americans know about it? Or was it just a ruse, like a fantasy? Whether it was a fantasy or not, though it was indeed taken seriously. All the religions talk about it. If the search for the fountain of youth was not among the reasons for the First Crusade in 1095, it was for the ensuing ones in 1147 and 1189, respectively. Probably the most detailed version of questing for immortality and the afterlife have come from Egypt. The pharaoh was believed by the people to be immortal by virtue of the fact that he had sat on the throne. The first pharaohs were known to be gods who came down from heaven, space. Later, pharaohs were more like demigods to be worshipped. However, it took place. Each successive pharaoh claimed direct descent from the god. Egyptian tradition held that in times immemorial, gods of heaven came down unto earth via the central disk. And we have, it looks like a symbol of the winged celestial disk. The symbol has appeared many times throughout ancient history, and later you will see why. The winged celestial disk. As legend has it, this immense celestial disk came down to earth and raised Egypt from under the mud and water because it had been submerged. That is why Egypt was nicknamed the raised land. The god who piloted the disk was named Ptah, and eventually he begot a son named Ra, who was given the kingdom of Egypt. One should notice here where the word Amen comes from. So effectively, when you pray in church, you are praying to the god Ra Amen. Amen in Egypt also meant the hidden one. So perhaps religion is hiding something from you. Ra Amen, dividing his kingdom between Osiris, day, and Seth, night. And so begins the whole Egyptian pantheon. It is clear immortality is misunderstood today on earth. Although in the past it might have been well known, we clearly have forgotten who we are and why are we here, let alone where we are going. We think we are immortal, finite beings. We think we are mortal and finite beings. And for some, religion serves as a means for attaining an afterlife. But for others, science prevails and there is no afterlife. If we are to ever find the real hidden truth, we must go beyond science and religion and reconcile the two. Obviously, there are valid elements in both perspectives. When Columbus set sail for Spain in 1492, the Muslim occupation of the Iberian Peninsula concluded with the surrender of the Moors at Granada. The Muslims and Christians had bickered for centuries and contested the peninsula, but there was one thing the two ideologies had in common, and that was the tale in the Quran concerning the fish and the fountain of life. Since this story was almost identical to the Greek legend of Glaucus, the Moors believed in the fountain as well. In the Bible, the fountain is more like a river, as in many Native American accounts, and it's described in the book of Revelations as a pure river of water of life, clear as crystal, proceeding out of the throne of God. In the midst of the street of it, in either side of the river, was there the tree of life with 12 manner of fruit. It is clear all religions share common themes and symbols, one of them being immortality. If we are to understand who we are, we should start with this notion and try to figure out what the ancient peoples meant by the fountain of youth, life. Whatever it is, it does not dwell solely in science or religion. It is somewhere in between. Anton LaVey, high priest of the Church of Satan, once proclaimed that there is a force between good and evil, and that it is the force of creation. If we are to find it, we must expand the way we think and maybe even ourselves. One powerful occult image to higher level Satanism and Freemasonry is the androgynous devil goat Baphomet. Namaste, namaskaram.